Melbourne is ranked as world's 67th most expensive city out of 227 cities in the most recent survey. Now, it is quite different for those people who have just arrived to Australia versus someone who's been living in Australia for the last 5 years, right? So today in this video, I'm going to talk to you about my monthly expenses, and I'm also going to share different ways on how you can save up some money. Without any further ado, let's get started. The major expense anyone could have is rent. So I live in the suburbs, and I live in a 3-bedroom house, and it costs me about $2,400 a month. So now, because I live with 3 people, each one of us pay about $800 of rent monthly. Now, if you ask me, Sarvani, which is better? Should we live in suburbs or should we live in the inner city of Melbourne? That is Melbourne CBD. I have lived in Melbourne CBD for about 4 months, I should say, from January to April. But what I found is during my tenure of living in the city, I spent a lot. I spent a lot on rent, and I felt the amount that I spent was not worth, because the houses that you find in the city are not that spacious. And the kitchen, especially because we Indians love our food and the kind of food that we make, the kitchens are quite small, and I just couldn't cook a lot of food, and it was quite uncomfortable for me. Another thing is, because you're surrounded by a lot of shops and a lot of stuff, we tend to spend a lot during weekends. So every weekend we would go out, spend a lot of money, and then come back home. So when I compare living in suburbs versus living in the city, I would say living in suburbs would help you save a ton of money and you would get a really spacious house. I would say I've also lived in a house where we had 4 bedrooms. It was extremely spacious, but it was just $2,000 a month, because that's quite a way. It takes about 40 minutes from that suburb to reach Flinders. That's the city. And for me, currently, it takes about 25 minutes to reach to Flinders. So we are living currently slightly closer to the city, which is again why the rents are slightly higher as well. Followed by the next expense that we usually have is bills, which means electricity, water, gas, Wi-Fi. These are the usual bills that everyone should pay. And that will cost you about $200 to $300 in total. And then when you split it up based on how many ever people you live with, that's how much it's going to cost. Now for me, it usually costs about $100, $120, because we have less people in the house, and because we all work from home, usually the electricity slightly goes up. And again, even in winters, sometimes because you always have heaters running, you might usually have an electricity hike as well. Now let's talk about groceries and vegetables. Now initially in the initial years, we used to heavily rely on frozen food, because that's what we would get back in Coles, Aldi, Woolworths, and we used to not have much time, not much money, and all of that. So now we prefer buying fresh vegetables from market. So we have a supermarket right close, right next to my house, and we spend about $50 a week for 3 people on fresh vegetables, and it costs about $200 a month for 3 of us to get fresh vegetables. And for groceries, it costs again about $150 to $200 based on what we purchase. And if you ask me, Sarvani, where do you buy groceries? We have an Indian store that's close to my place as well. It's one of the biggest stores, and you usually get stuff for less. We also go and buy chips and some of the smaller grocery items from Coles or Woolies. So that costs about $50 a month, or $50 to $75 a month. The next major spend would go on transport. And because I don't drive a car, I usually use public transport. So whenever I go by public transport, I spend $9 a day So going and coming back, I spend $9 a day. So previously, because I used to work 5 days a week or sometimes 6 days a week, I would take a monthly pass which costed about $160 a month, I believe. But now, because I work 1 to 2 days a week from the office and rest of the days from home, my transport costs have major cut down. So now I recharge my Mikey about $30-$40 a month, and that should suffice my visits to the office. Then I have about $500 of my monthly expenses, such as for my phone bill, and I do manage a couple of my clients, so I use a bunch of softwares for which I pay, and for my social life as well. So because most of the weekends we go out, we watch movies, we have food. So for all of that, I spend about $400 to $500 a month, and I think that is more than enough. And I'm actually planning to cut that down. $400 to $500 is slightly on the expensive side, so I'm planning to make it to $250 to $300. Yeah. Now, the rest of the money that I usually have would go into different kinds of savings, and I also have to pay my tax, and there's a bunch of other expenses that I have. So I make sure I always have about 10 to 20% of the money that I earn in savings, which is maybe can be considered as emergency savings, or let's say if I'm planning to go India, I have a bunch of money saved from before and all of that. So I'm very planned in terms of my finances. I don't do much of shopping. I do a major shopping maybe once every quarter, which is 3 months, and I don't spend much on Boxing Day as well, because I know that's old stock, and I don't know, for some reason I don't like shopping on Boxing Days and stuff. I don't do clothing shopping and all of that. If there's something that's worth that I find, I save up some money for it. Let's say if I have to purchase a camera, purchase a mic, or any of those gadgets and stuff, then I spend worth on Boxing Day, but otherwise I usually save a ton. I also save some money for my travels. Let's say if I would like to travel to Adelaide, if I would like to travel to Sydney and all of that, I usually save money, and I spend money on experiences rather than things. That's one of the things that I found more worth. So yeah, I hope this video was quite helpful, and if you like this video, please make sure you hit like, comment and subscribe, and wait until my next week's video. Bye!